such a bunch of fuckers. We really are. I mean, really, honestly. I mean, oh. I have been looking for a long, 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 long time for people who would answer some of my questions. I was very uncomfortable with my understanding of what was happening. I had taken some courses at something or other and sustainable finance. And I couldn't find anyone, even the participants on this course. And I have about 5 or 6 friends now from that sustainable finance course. And they understood what I was asking, which no one else did. So I was feeling very uncomfortable with what was available for me to learn, and I couldn't see what I couldn't see. But I was also uncomfortable with how sustainability was being framed, and I didn't know what I was uncomfortable about. So, the sort of technocratic, the corporate, the disconnected from the deeper histories. And I knew it was disconnected from the lived realities from people around the world, but I couldn't find out how. And I could only, pieces of information were just coming in, but not kind of registering with me. I needed some way to look at them deliberately. And so I was looking for a space that acknowledged colonial legacies and was able to hold that complexity carefully, and allow me to be able to learn in that, because here I came with all of my baggage, and I so when I first saw your website, the courage I saw, and the courage was in a particular way because it was the pictures that you'd drawn. I learn in pictures. That's one of the ways I seem to make sense of things. And the care that you'd taken on your original website, each time I got further into this process of applying, I was rewarded by more beautiful, exquisite pictures that helped me find metaphors for what I was trying to learn. So I could tell immediately this was a place that I could be very happy and also learn to ask the right questions, but I could feel the integrity on the course, or on the website.
And it's so funny because it's almost precisely the opposite of what Rachel just said. The contrary, I felt very comfortable and very confident in my role being a sustainability manager in the fashion industry and beyond. And it was just a moment where I had quit my former job and I had the idea to eventually enter into academia, although I have never been a good or clear and thoughtful writer and thinker. And I was researching and reading a little bit, but my intentionality was more about finding like the cool and new disruptive topic, which I could eventually represent in the future. And I was not sure if it was like circularity or regeneration, in that direction. And then I started thinking about certain colonial legacies, and because my sister, she's a dancer, and she researched on coloniality and decoloniality, but more like in the cultural studies field. I had this idea of this super intellectualized post-colonial studies, which I never found very accessible, and I also didn't understand it. Yeah, and I think then I stumbled upon an article from Sam on Medium. And then I was like, okay, this is it. This is really interesting. And I started looking out for educational content and eventually, like courses, online courses, and stuff like that. And I didn't find a lot of radical stuff. Although I was very comfortable and confident before, somehow I think most of us know that we need an ego check. I always I liked radical and disruptive ideas, but I was very, very, very conflict avoidant. And then, well, I saw the advertisement, then following Sam's article on Medium, on LinkedIn, and then I had a look at the website, and what catched me on the website was the quote of Chico Mendes, which I had used a lot in the past. I had even printed T-shirts, with a quote without actually knowing what it actually means. Yeah. And I was like giving it on birthdays to my friends. So yeah, it was a combination of feeling uncomfortable after having written an article from one of the navigators on Medium, then researching a little bit, then being amazed by the website, and then I basically applied. And I remember when I sent out the application, I was like, shit, now I need to, I should have taken more time. I should have researched a little bit. So I was very, very, very anxious when I sent the application, and I couldn't change anything, I think, afterwards. And then I was very positively surprised. And I was like, okay, now you have to do it.
Great question. So that was sustainable finance. And what I was looking for is the finance system. Are people in finance trying to protect the finance system from climate change, or the other way around? So that was really my question, was why are they trying to protect it and against whom? I don't think I knew what I was looking for, but I knew when I'd found it. And it's not a mistake that I couldn't find a place to learn here. It's no coincidence. This isn't available anywhere that I've heard, but I did speak with two of my friends from there. Yeah, I couldn't find a place to learn. They certainly weren't going to answer my questions.
Yeah, my sister, and I remember the first time, reading her thesis, and she was also sharing a lot of literature with me because we are both fluent in Spanish. So I did try to read Quijano, like 12, 13 years ago, and I didn't understand a word. I couldn't. And it's really, really interesting because reading it now, it's so different. I'm still struggling, but it's very, very, very different. Within my circle of folks I know in the sustainability scenery, no. I started talking about this, and everybody had like loads of question marks on their front heads because it was either circularity, the next big thing, or regeneration, And funnily, I think it was also the LinkedIn algorithm, I must admit, because only after registering for the course, I realized that somebody I know and I had already worked with, who was at that time a professor for sustainability management over here in Cologne, Germany, she had also registered. Marina. Yeah. And we only realized afterwards. So that was nice. Yeah. I think it has to do something with Germany and where I'm based and how this whole discourse is taking place or not taking place. But it also 3 years ago, it was and still is different. There's only the academic careers or ideas, post-colonial, whatever. But there's nothing decolonial or anything.
I hang out ish with a lot of people who are doing progressive work in the UK, but the decolonization as a label, it's just I don't know where it would stick here, because we are blind to it. Is it too intellectual?
George Orwell, arguably one of the greatest British writers ever, he wrote from his experience of growing up in British India. So if you want, in a way, the biggest decolonial writer of all time that everybody knows and everybody quotes and etc., it's Orwell. And one of the most, I think, influential things about him is he never did like university. He never went to higher education. So everything that he wrote from experience. And Animal Farm is one of the things that everyone reads at school in the UK. So what I'm trying to point out is that not only is it right there, it's also something that the establishment puts right there in front of your face and says like, oh, but you can just forget about this. This is not something you have to think about further. This is a book that we're doing at school. We've done it. We can move on. And then you never ever go back to, but why did Orwell write this book? What was he trying to talk about? And then 1984 is one of those things that, the establishment again doesn't want you to talk about or think about anymore because that's exactly what they're doing today, right? So it's one of those things that, again, you do when you're young, and then it's like, oh, but we've done that. We know better now. Society's moved on, There's this kind of like, there's this subversive way that the decolonial British narrative is being, in a way, introduced to you, but made in such a boring fashion that you just kind of like, yeah, but I know that. I've done that. It has no relevance to all of this stuff now. Which to me is like, this is such a KGB move. And KGB obviously learned everything that they did from British colonial times. So when we talk about like next level societal manipulation, about manufacturing this compliance of this, like, yeah, let's accept this as a norm. Everything you're saying now is just sort of like, in a way, like this is where it all comes from,
And perhaps Orwell is venerated for different reasons. It's sort of, let's slide off what he was actually saying.
I think I was also drawn to the name. I mean, this intro, like introduction to decolonial sustainability, because after like starting to be interested in the option, the topic, whatever, I think we all realized very quickly, okay, this is not a one-time lecture, right? This is like ongoing, a lifelong thing. And so that really, really, really catched me. But now it's like 3 years later, right? And there's a lot of different offers, online and offline, with everything going on. And a lot of folks, I think, are framing something as educational regarding the topic. So yeah, I don't know if I would be as drawn to the name Introduction to Decolonial Sustainability today as I was 3 years ago, right?
I still feel this weight, I suppose, on my heart of this debt that I owe to the people on the course. Obviously I was born into the British establishment. I lived in the imperial court all my life. I'm completely blind, almost completely blinded to the realities that we create for others around the world. I mean, I can read it intellectually, I can understand in that way, but the reality of being with people who were showing me their different approaches, their different experiences, is priceless. And I'm aware that my language during our meetings must have been peppered with offensive misconceptions, and yet I was held while I learned by the generous hearts of the people with me. That is something, that is where change happens, and so that is where my debt is, and that is, but it's not really a debt. It's me. I can, the minute someone opens their mouth about colonization or anything, I take offense. I go ahead. I write something about it, And so how everybody kept with me during our course was still astounds me. It wasn't comfortable. That's another thing I'd say. Pieces of me were being cut away with no anesthetic and with people watching. But it was always real, and it was always generous, and it was always alive. And so I carry those moments of kind of shared insight with me, and they're still very alive.
Yeah, very much alive, right? Which doesn't always feel comfortable. Like looking back, first of all, basically like the learning experience or the unlearning experience. I think only now, like 2 or 3 years later, I start to get it, the design, the different approaches, the different methodologies, crewing, which was for me a new experience because I've always been this lonesome warrior, building, and I was good at it, building like sustainability dictatorships within companies, right? And I never had peers, to talk to and stuff like that. But then also learning the very clear boundaries you created and adjusted, life, feeling and experiencing, this was and is really great. But also like when I applied for the second time, I thought I was better equipped and I would be able to dive more directly into the content because I felt I had missed something out or I didn't take the time. But I realized doing the course the second time, I was much better equipped with regard to crewing, and holding spaces with others, but not better prepared for the content. Being with others, crewing, holding spaces is much more important than being, prepared for the reading material or the videos or whatever.
I found my voice. I felt seen in all my flaws. It still seemed okay to be exploring this. And so I have found my flawed voice. And I feel rooted in my previous understanding and also what I've gained from the course. I feel happy to have acted on impulse and taken this kind of learning on board, or some of it, as Lavinia says. I'm touched all of the reading, but I did what I could at the time. So professionally, it's emboldened me to speak, even when I can't see the whole picture, and even within institutions that are still very much part of the old paradigm. It's made me much more intentional. I've insisted on this in the partnerships that I form or in the relationships that I form. I insist that we try so hard as hard as we can to bring this perspective into the room as well, and we failed at that regularly, so much so that I have made a set of cards to show what I think we're up against, and I'm trying to there's a phrase in bringing up kids which is something like love the sinner, hate the sin. So I'm trying to find something to point a finger of blame at the idea rather than the people that are possessed by it. And that's made it easier now for me to create some humor around this is what we're like when we're possessed. And so this is a problem we all have. I'm speaking about people in England, but it's also, it's the problem of seeing objects. I try to keep the narratives on board. I've got a lot to say on this because it's been foundational for me. It's really helped me find my voice. So that's a start.
I think the biggest impact and learning was and is the understanding of relationships versus standards and frameworks for my personal well-being as well as my professional well-being. I don't need frameworks, right? In Sustainability Inc. and in the business world. And it really, really helped me, or like one of the biggest impacts was overcoming my conflict avoidance. It's so necessary, which made my life a little complicated for a while and in between as well. But yeah, I think it's very, very necessary. Yeah. So Rachel mentioned that she found her voice. And I think I can also conclude that I found my voice, but it's totally different than I thought it would be. Voice in the sense of that I understood that I do have a voice. I am allowed to have a voice, but I need to be much more humble. And it's not the same voice as I was having before. And I also know when to shut my mouth. Oh, well, I'm learning. I'm still in the process because sometimes I forget it.
I haven't learned how to do that yet. I wanted to kind of pay tribute to the design of the course. And Lavinia, I love what you say about the relationships versus standards and frameworks. So something that you did that it showed me it was possible to do was you created this space of radical imagination. And that was in the mural board. It was in the design and the pictures. You know how much I just loved what you'd done there, because you created this space of imagination inside it. And you told different stories. I remember vividly some of the stories that you told, particularly the one where it was outstanding. I could hear them when you did that. But also what I learned so much from was the care that you'd taken over helping us to be part of this radical imagination. And because you'd taken so much care, it meant so much, because it so clearly was 100% commitment of your imagination and your creative powers between you. And because you'd done that, it kind of pulled me into that's a possibility. We can have multidimensional learning experiences like that, which involve people from different kinds of cultures. But also the love that you poured into it has kind of insists that I also do something with my whole heart like that can be radical, and that's okay. It was a courageous design, and I didn't know that was possible.
Do you know how I know it was possible? Because that's what I would have had if I had grown up without colonization ever existing. I would have had a whole culture that would have loved me so much that they would have had so many stories made especially for me to understand how the world works and how I can be in the world.
Oh, we're such a bunch of fuckers, we really are.
This is recording.
It is, but you're editing it, right?
Yes.
I mean, really, honestly, I mean, oh.
There are people who hold on to those stories. And there are people who want to send their children to learn English and to go for a master's education in England or whatever and study sustainable finance and join the UN. And yeah. What is it that you feel you've gained from Intro to Decolonial Sustainability after the end of the expedition? Do you feel like you gained, I think, for example, both of you mentioned relationships, that's for sure, through the crewing itself and other new relationships, even outside the course. And the fact of finding your voice, I think it's a massive gain, obviously. There were expeditioners who mentioned in their testimonials they felt liberated. They felt like they were able to let go of things, which I think Lavinia also mentioned, letting go of frameworks, methodologies, narratives that were being sold to you that you were certain about, etc.
I can't say that I've let go of these narratives, but I recognize them now. I've always been outside the corporate system. So now I can step outside that system. So I can see, someone who was at school with George Orwell coming out with some stuff. And then I can get up early in the morning and write about it from outside and say, oh, he's gripped by this idea that colonialism is over. And so I can write a phantom of, colonial amnesia, for example. So I can see from the outside. So I'm not afraid to say so now. I'm not confused by it. I am still very confused, but not by some of it.
I think it's the notion of embodiment of everything, of feelings, of communication, and all of that happening in an online space, in a very well curated online space. And I'm speaking here as a trained yoga teacher. And I learned, with you in the online space you created, what embodiment might mean beyond.
So are you saying that the course vastly improved your practice of yoga?
Oh, I'm actually in like multiple identity crises because of the course, obviously, with yoga. So, but yeah, maybe yes, it disrupted it for sure. It changed the practice, that for sure. I think it's also like the way one looks for information, because you basically motivate us in doing our own research in different ways. Helped me a lot. And also,
And
I
what
think
do you mean exactly? Do you mean diversifying your sources or reading more broadly or more critically or
everything combined, right? And I think that might differ for different folks. So in my case, I have mostly been drawn due to my past to like academic papers, scientific papers, data, peer-reviewed, blah, but not so much on, lived experiences. Also, I couldn't believe that a YouTube video could bring actual content or like folks having conversations, This might sound like very basic, but for me, this changed a lot.